Dustin Baker, VikesNow, the post-draft edition, April 28th, about 45 minutes, hour after the Vikings picked at number 32. To recap, they traded out of the 12th pick for the 32nd pick, the 34th pick, and a third rounder. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, 77 or something. But anyhow, how are you feeling? I'm going to guess that you're not too incredibly happy. That was the sentiment on social media, that the trade wasn't as rich as some would have forecasted or hoped for. So here's the deal. I'll explain it. The Vikings at the number 12 spot, a somewhat premium position. Of course, it's not in the top 10, but there were teams arguably salivating to get to that spot. The team had a chance to be abusive, especially to a division rival, and say, no, we're not going to abide by your stupid draft calculators. We want a first rounder next year on top of all this shit you already offered us. Had that opportunity. Didn't take it, or it wasn't available. Alas, they wanted to stockpile more draft capital to bolster this depth chart that I've told you guys is top heavy, to be better for 2022 and the future beyond that. So the best way for the general manager in his first night on the job, so to speak, to do that was to accept a trade that was kind of a wash in terms of which calculator you follow. If you follow the draft calculators like the Rich Hill, the Lions won. If you use the analytic ones, the nerd ones like PFF or OTC, then the Vikings won. Regardless, at that spot, sometimes how can I say this? You have the opportunity to throw trade calculations out the window because there's the hope that a team who wants to get up into the top 12 will sell everything, kind of like the Bears did to get Justin Fields last year. Vikings didn't get that kind of deal, so I understand why you're pissed. They didn't step on the neck of anybody when they could have, or at least teams in the past do that. Vikings can't do that with the first-year GM. So the dude that they got, Lewis Cine from Georgia, a national champion, bunch of guys from that team entered the NFL tonight, which is kind of cool. He is a succession plan to Harrison Smith, who will be 34 next February. Harrison Smith's not going to play too much longer. He doesn't look like he's slowing down a lot, but if history is a reasonable indicator, which it typically is, not going to play for longer than 2 or 3 more years. Cine, by that time, he's 22. He'll be hitting the beginning of his prime. So that part is something to rejoice over. You now have a plan for life after Harrison Smith. However, the deal is that safety is considered a premium position. So when you take that in the first round, some people are like, what the hell? And there's also the Kyle Hamilton-itis of this all. And I was right there with the rest of yous, if indeed this is what you were doing, thinking every whisper that we've heard for the last month about Kyle Hamilton tumbling happened. Even the Commanders said, no thanks, we're trading out of this. So what was once a pipe dream came to fruition, that arguably the top 3 player in the draft was there for the Vikings to take a safety, no less. Nope, didn't want a safety, didn't want a Notre Dame dude, didn't want a defensive player, blue chip guy like that. We're going to stockpile draft picks. Fast forward 2 hours, and you went and got a safety when you could have had the best safety in this draft class, perhaps in the last several draft classes. No cigar. So that part was frustrating, especially if you think Hamilton was a lock, which I did. And when all of the smoke started a month ago about Hamilton being there at 12, I thought it was insane. There's no way that many teams are going to pass on him. They did. And the Vikings had a golden opportunity to grab him. They did not. They got a Hamilton light guy. Now, maybe Cine will end up being better than Hamilton. That's the beauty of draft night. You don't know until these games start. But if you're going to be upset, that is a legitimate cause. There's 2 reasons for it. Because the trade didn't work out the way that you wanted. They didn't just take advantage of the lowly Lions. They kept it status quo, kept the trade fair. And then they ultimately evidently wanted a safety. They didn't get the one that, you can put them on the billboard. They got a lesser version of what Kyle Hamilton is promised to be. That's a little disappointing. However, in the grand scheme of things, this is probably why you watch the show, to get the substantiation from a bird's eye view, is that there's no reason to be mad. We already knew the defense was a a problem in the sense that it's thin on this roster, just like it was last year. You got a starting lineup. That's it. I've written a few times on VikingsTerritory.com this week. What happens if Eric Kendricks gets hurt? July 8th. Out for the year. Then what? Troy Dye? Blake Lynch, excuse me. I don't know. See if Anthony Barr's knee's still working. So linebacker is skimpy. Cornerback, what happens if Patrick Peterson on that same day gets hurt? In trouble. You got to hope Chandon Sullivan is just marvelous or Nate Harrison is second coming. But I think they'll draft a cornerback tomorrow night. I haven't decided if I'm going to do a show about that or just do another recap after the fact for this busy Friday that the Vikings are about to have 3 picks. But what you knew that the defense needed to get deeper. Ultimately, it did because Cine should start. It throws the Cameron Bynum plan into a little bit of flux. What's the deal there? Is he going to split time, or is it Cine and Bynum that made the best man win? We talked about how that the safety spot was the one position during this free agency on defense. Vikings haven't done anything. Now we know that they were going to get one in the draft with Cine. Probably should have been Hamilton. But they were planning for this to get a safety, and perhaps Bynum isn't the 2022 starter at free safety, as was the case a week ago, because now they have a guy who has a higher upside than Bynum. But back to the initial point, you don't need to be upset once you get over the resentment of the trade or the lack of Hamilton. You got a damn good football player. The dude is known for his athleticism, his versatility, and his violence. Some of you will say, well, what do we want that for? Just going to get penalties. I get it, but you still need some sort of, hitman type of personality, especially when hitman's not there in a few years, to bring the heat. Still football, and guys need to get smacked around. Cine can do that. Let's see here. On trades, it's real tricky. It's real tricky to have patience because everybody wants to know from shows like this who won the trade. You cannot foresee that on night number 1, let alone when you haven't seen the rest of the trade play out, even in the immediate days. Of course, trades need years. I'm reminded of the Khalil Mack trade when he got sent to the Bears, and the Raiders got Josh Jacobs and a couple other draft picks. And for a while, it looked like, Khalil Mack's going to be this beast in Chicago, keep up that linebacker lore in the Windy City. He did for a while, most of the time, but he was never an absolute franchise changer. And then when Josh Jacobs got good, it looked like, the Raiders won the trade. Now the damn thing just feels like a stalemate. Who gives a shit? They just swapped assets. None of them really did anything for either team. Of course, they went to playoffs, didn't do anything, both teams. So it is really a tough spot for you to sit here and beef about Adolfo Mensa, fire him or some shit like that. You can't tell until you see his grand plan. And then on top of that, you got to see how it all plays out in the grand scheme of things. And I know in the digital age, we don't have patience for it, but that's what you need. Almost like the Diggs trade. How are we going to replace him? Well, you did. It was a cheaper option for 5 years in Justin Jefferson. So you need nuance, you need perspective, you need patience, all of those things when evaluating sports, especially trades. A little blurb on tomorrow. 3 picks. The second pick of Friday evening, which should happen around, 6:10, 6:15. I know this Malik Willis stuff is out there, and they could have had him on the 5th-year option, but I'm really convinced this is going to be a cornerback. Andrew Booth, my McDuffie prediction was wrong because I didn't foresee them trading back 20 spots, but I think it'll be Andrew Booth. I think it'll be a cornerback, and then there you go. You have some of the boxes checked so that they're not so thin on defense. And then you have, Kwesi showed that his metal, what he's made of for trading, they'll probably end up with another second-round pick if they can package some of this other draft capital that they have later on. So I would expect a cornerback. I wouldn't rule out the Malik Willis thing because it's impossible to see what's in Kwesi's mind. Does he want to hedge his Cousins experiment and really give it 2 years for Malik Willis to be the next guy? Probably not. Could have selected him at the very last pick, which the momentum from the fans started to feel like, alas, it did not happen. Yeah, I think cornerback is what I'm set on, talking it through with you guys out loud. I think that's what it'll be. And then you just have to wait and see what the rest of the night has. But hey, at least it's a lot more. You'll see a lot more guys come onto the team, and you'll see the fruits of this trade bear out before your eyes tomorrow. After the immediacy of you being a little bit upset that the Lions seemed like they just, I don't think they worked the Vikings over, but it was a trade that was pretty, they swapped assets. They could have got a lot more. I'm with you on that. I should be back tomorrow in this time slot to evaluate 3 new Viking players. I think if that goes according to plan, that's all I got for round 1 of the draft. Welcome Lewis Cine to the team, and Skol, baby.